On today's episode, as we dive fin too deep with myself and Neal Driscoll, are the Miami Dolphins currently exploring the trade market with some of that cap they're expected to have post June 1st? We'll give our list of 3 free agents we think could be the finishing touches to this roster if they are added post June 1st. Plus, we will talk about the safety position. Vic Fangio spoke for the first time since leaving Miami, and we will talk about so much more. So do us a favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new. Let's get into this.
Loses the football. Touchdown! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score. He's the field on the near side. That open. Touchdown. The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown. He's going deep. He's got it for a touchdown again.
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
You're listening to Fin Too Deep.
Tua back to throw. Blitz coming. They get to him. No, he takes off running. And he's in. Touchdown, Miami.
With the sixth pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jalen Waddle.
Giving you unfiltered, informed, and controversial takes on the Miami Dolphins and the NFL Draft. Here's Reason and Neal.
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we're back here for another one as we dive fin too deep before I dive into deep of the crystal waters of Punta Cana. So, Neal, we haven't had a chance to catch up in front of the people since the OBJ signing happened. Your thoughts on Odell Beckham Jr. taking, showing that he's a little egoless in taking a $3 million base and also accepting the role of wide receiver 3 when we all know he believes he's still a wide receiver 1.
Yeah, look, I'm a big fan of the move, and it was one of those things like when he signed with Baltimore for $15 million last year. Now I was scratching my head like, what do they see in the guy? And once I saw the price tag the Dolphins got him for, I'm like, wow, this is an extreme value. He's a guy that I think when it was the most crucial times in Baltimore last year is the guy that Lamar Jackson threw the football to. He showed some of that burst. I think he's going to be a little healthier. I just think he's a great complement to what we have. I actually think it's going to be a hell of a value at the $3 million. And when you pay a guy with escalators, right? If he makes $8.5 million, we're all going to be talking about re-signing him for an extra year after the season, right? If he plays to that level to warrant those type of incentives. So I think he brings a swagger. And I don't know if you saw the interview with Kay Adams today with Isaiah Likely. The Baltimore
Ravens. How good of a leader he is, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I've been saying. I've heard that here from receivers that played in the same unit as him, that they said how great he was and how much he meant and how he brought the professionalism to the room. And I think he does that. I think he is, when you're a team vying for a championship, he brings that pedigree to the table. It's something we don't have a lot of. And I think he's going to be a really nice fit. You don't need him to be a 1,200-yard receiver here. He doesn't have to be, the old Odell. He's got to be a guy when it's 3rd and 6 and we need to move some chains. He's got to be a guy who can operate in the slot and get open. And I think he can do that. What I do like about it a lot is in a lot of the big games Baltimore had last year, and they played a lot of big games, it was Odell making big plays. We saw this. We all seen the slant video against the Cleveland Browns when he takes it to the house and he looked sure fast there. But, there was other games like the Rams game, he made some big catches. I mean, I think that Odell has some gas in the tank. And I think our situation allows him to kind of come here on a little bit of a pitch count, which I think will help him when it's December, January. and we need, a guy who can make tough catches when the season's on the line. So I love the move. I'm all the way in. I think the energy and swagger it brings is great. So, the video that he put out, that hype video, that was pretty cool to see. I'm all in. So Odell, welcome to Miami, man. Can't wait to see you hopefully catch a few touchdowns and be the number 3 receiver that we couldn't find last year.
Well, the good thing is, I mean, they added Malik Washington and Tajay Washington, but those are mainly slot options. And he allows you that flexibility I've been talking about all offseason. They needed with a bigger body receiver that Xavier Legette would have brought here, where you can flex Tyreek and Jalen Waddle in and out of the slot. So, Andy gives you a vertical threat. And let's be honest, he's has proven to have surer hands in the end zone than Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. And you add that with the addition of Jonnu Smith, and all of a sudden, the red zone offense for Miami looks even more lethal than what it was last year. And this was one of the best red zone teams, but we all know what I mean by that in terms of you had Mostert, right, snatching a bunch of touchdowns that could have been passing touchdown opportunities, but no longer do we have, that fade being thrown to a guy that's, sub 6 foot. Now you got a guy out there who can go up, can high point that football. And if Mike McDaniel wants to go back to that fade, just put that boy Odell on the boundary. You know what I mean? So adds flexibility.
And we had the number 1 ranked offense in football last year. Obviously, the number 1 ranked passing offense, and that was with Tyreek and Waddle never really being healthy together. So what did the Dolphins do? They go out and add a bona fide number 3 receiver. Odell's going to be better than Claypool, Cedric, anyone we had last year. We added
combined.
Combined. We added a vertical threat pass catching tight end in Jonnu Smith that, I like Durham Smythe, but the guy leaves a lot to be desired when it comes to the passing game. Jonnu Smith, Odell Beckham are just such great weapons to bring in. There used to be big ticket items that had to be the guy. They can be part of the supporting cast here and find a lot of production. And for Odell specifically, he's gonna want another contract after this season. He chose Tua and Miami, right, and Mike McDaniel over Andy Reid, Kansas City, and Pat Mahomes. I don't know if that's the smartest move, but damn, as a Dolphin fan, it makes me excited to see what we have here, because I hear a lot of people complaining about coaches and quarterbacks here in Miami. In the landscape of the NFL, the Miami Dolphins and Miami specifically has become the place to go play. And that is really good when you're in a talent acquisition business and players have more power than they ever have. If they want to come to Miami and they want to come for cheaper than the market value is, that's how you get really good values. And it wouldn't surprise me if at $3 million, Odell Beckham turns out to be one of the better values in the whole free agent market this year as a number 3 in Miami.
Dad Dean donates $20 to thank you both for helping my family get through tough times. The Dean family loves you guys. Appreciate you. Hope your son is doing well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dean. So, the most impressive thing to me was, how big of a role Mike McDaniel played in the situation, right?
Right.
In constant contact. And I talked about this on the show yesterday. What's great with Richmond and ball game, what's great is, we've been through the Flores era where we heard coaches and players didn't want to come here because they didn't want to play for Flores or coach for Flores. We've been, through the Cam Camerons and such, and the Joe Philbins who had zero bond or feel for their players, and we can all remember what happened to Ocho Cinco and how that was handled. And
Joe Philbin was my least favorite coach I've ever seen, I think.
Yeah. So it's just such a breath of fresh air to have a coach that players, and you haven't even won a Super Bowl yet, and players want to come here and play for him.
Yeah, Mike McDaniel's done 2 things in his 2+ years in Miami. First, when he came here, he had a quarterback that, for lack of a better term, was broken because of the previous regime. And when he came in as the head coach, if they didn't hire him just because of his ability probably to tell a good story of how he would fix Tua, a lot of times he could have got probably out of that, or at least got them to invest early draft picks on a quarterback, right? We never seen any of that. That means he truly believed, to me, in Tua. And what we've seen, You could throw any rankings in the top 10 in the trash can for all I care. I don't give a shit. I know I can win a Super Bowl with a quarterback like Tua, and I know that statistically he's been top 5 2 years in a row, and he's only going to get better. So I'll take that all the time. So miraculous job, a 5th overall pick, taking him from, a guy that was broken to a guy who's flourishing and about to be the highest paid Miami Dolphin ever, right? Amazing work. The complete 180 that he did with the culture of this organization, not just for the fans, but for the front office, the players, in 2 years for a young coach that's never coached at a head coaching level in his life is absolutely staggering how well of a job he's done. So where he could be a better situational play caller, and we all know that, and I think we'll start seeing some of that as he gets more experience. He's accomplished 2 of the hardest things to do in the NFL: build a franchise quarterback and build an organization that everyone wants to come to. Mike McDaniel, man, has been worth every penny this organization paid. I've heard people think that he's on the hot seat. I think he might get an extension this year.
Speaking of extensions, someone we talked about months ago that was talking about an extension and not a restructure, when people were talking about restructure, was Tyreek Hill. I mean, we were talking about this months and months ago, right? What was that, like another January callback are we going to, or February callback?
And I know that whoever said it recently, it was May 6th. We talked about this in the new year. I know that for sure.
Yeah, on the show. Yeah. We talked about this in like January, February, that's what we're hearing about an extension. Tyreek Hill has now, I don't know if you saw, but did you see that ESPN tweet that said Jalen Waddle hold out, whatever? The key takeaway from that was Tyreek Hill saying, hey, AB saying that Tyreek Hill's getting an extension because ESPN is Antonio Brown's thing, right? And the week before that, Antonio Brown had an interview with Tyreek Hill. So, and then you saw, Tyreek Hill even change his picture to Chris Greer.
Right.
So where are you at with that right now? Do you think, the talks are picking back up with an extension?
I think so. What I think it's kind of what we've seen with the Eagles over 2 years. They paid their quarterback and got both their receivers. I think you're going to see the same thing in Miami, and it probably all happens pretty. When I say soon, I think Tua is the first.
So you think Tua's contract's tied into the extension?
Everything. I think because what you have to see is the landscape of how that is going to escalate over a 5-year period. And what I think, I've heard a lot of the noise. And look, if you read tea leaves, you could say, oh, Miami's getting frustrated with Tyreek. They want to get out. I actually think it's going to be the opposite. I think that Tyreek wants to be here long term. I think Tyreek's probably in a position where the Dolphins want cap flexibility and he wants security, and they're going to try to find some harmony there. We know that, for me, that worst case, Tyreek's here 24 and 25. That 26 cap number is where it gets scary. If they can move that to a bonus and get the cap hit down, I think that the Dolphins and Tyreek are going to work an extension that keeps them here in 25 and 26 with new money, rip up the old deal that's more cap friendly to the Dolphins. And because of that, they're going to be able to extend Jalen Waddle, Javon Holland, and Jalen Phillips on top of it. So I think that they're looking for, because they're operating a little bit different reason than they did before. We've started to see the Dolphins do all these new things with void years, right? It's new to them, right? But they've added void years like Teron Armstead, and we saw it with Odell Beckham, right? They're adding void years to deals, and it allows you to get creative, and it allows you to kind of push where you got to pay the bank down the road. Tyreek ripping up his contract and giving new money to a deal is so much better than a restructure. And I don't think people understand. A restructure takes a portion of that restructure and spreads it out. So you're adding cap. So in 2026, instead of having a $48 million or $50 million cap hit, if they restructured him, it's going to be like $55 million. Yeah. It's actually a death sentence for him being here after 2 years to restructure him. So everyone who said that the Dolphins didn't restructure Tyreek this offseason says it's the end. It's actually the opposite. New money is better for Tyreek. It's better for the Dolphins. And I don't think the Dolphins or Tyreek are, unless something on the behavior front goes whack. And I know, and I've seen it in the comments here, and I know Big O is the one who's been pushing it on his show that the end's near. And with all due respect, I respectfully disagree completely. I think you have Tyreek here Tyreek Hill. Worst case, 2 more years in Miami.
South Florida Don says, just want to let you all know that my Twitter account has changed to @SoFlowArthur, middle name. Had to close the other account. Thanks for the excellent content. Resin and Neal, appreciate you. He says, go Fins. All right. So it's just interesting how you tied all the contracts into each other there. So let's keep it moving. And let's talk about, you wanted to do an exercise. 3 free agents the Miami Dolphins could add that could be considered the finishing touch on this roster, with all that money clearing out post June 1st, right? So let's get into it. I had an image made. So
while you're pulling it up, reason you agree with me on the Tyreek Hill front? Do you think a lot of the things I like? Do you think he's going to be here long term, or do you think they are really trying to evaluate a way out?
I dive deeper into it into the Tyreek Hill situation in a show that I got coming out while I'm gone. So
we'll wait for it. All right, we'll wait for it.
Yeah. So I wanted to, because I know you wanted to talk about it, so I gave you the floor to kind of get your things out.
It's an interesting topic. It really is.
Yeah. So for everyone listening, I got a show coming out Saturday, Monday, and Wednesday, and all 3 have special guests. And the Wednesday's show with special guests, we really dive into the Tyreek Hill thing.
Okay, awesome.
Amongst other things. Okay, so 3 free agents the Dolphins should add to complete their roster. We both I originally would have put Justin Simmons, but I didn't want to have the same. This would have been almost the same exact list, right?
And we didn't collaborate.
No, we didn't collaborate. So I would have put Justin Simmons, but I put this as, I would put Justin Simmons / Quandre Diggs at 1. So that was my way of doing this. You've got Justin Simmons. I've got Quandre Diggs. Quandre Diggs coming off a little bit of an off year last year. Looked a step slow. But the thing is, the things we're going to be asking our safeties to do, Quandre Diggs did some of those things in Seattle. I do think he's a scheme fit. I think he's a fit for what Weaver would want to do. He'd be cheaper than Justin Simmons, but obviously your pick, Justin Simmons, is the cream of the crop of the safety class. I've spoken on this multiple times. I would sign Justin Simmons based on the fact I can use him as leverage against Javon Holland alone. In negotiations if Holland's playing hardball, and you got an insurance, you got a security blanket in-house if Holland ends up leaving. So you got Justin Simmons. I got Quandre Diggs. Your thoughts?
Yeah, look, and I have no intel on this, right? But to understand the Dolphins post-June cap position, you got to understand where they're at the future salary cap, right? They're only projected to be $3 million under the cap next year, but that cap is off of this year's number. I've already said it on here that I've heard the cap's going to be about $30 million higher than it was this year. So in the world that I'm operating, I'm saying the Dolphins are around $33 million under the cap, and that's without a Tua deal. That's not with Javon Holland under contract, but we do have the 5th year options in place in Waddle and Phillips. A Waddle extension, right, would save cap space. A new money deal from Tyreek would save significant cap space. I think $19 million on that if new money deal. On Waddle, about 12, and that's just off the top of my head. If they label Teron Armstead's retirement post-June, it saves them $14 million in cap space, right? If Bradley Chubb, they decide, hey, Chop Robinson and Mo Camara, everything we want, Jalen Phillips looks healthy, they could get Bradley Chubb on a post-June as a $20 million cap relief, right? Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying is the Dolphins, if they need $45 million plus to sign Javon Holland and Tua, I think they can get double that available by being, smooth operators on the cap again. So I don't think they need to carry over any salary cap from this year is kind of the long story short that I'm saying. Justin Simmons is such a Chris Greer type of move, right? Look at the connection points, right? First of all, he played with Bradley Chubb in Denver, right? Mm-hmm. They have a good relationship. He played on multiple Pro Bowls with players like Tyreek Hill and Odell Beckham. There's a good relationship with Justin Simmons there. Who's the best or most surprising coach that's been brought on this roster? Butch Barry, right? Mm-hmm. Coached offensive line, right? Probably had nothing to do with the defense, right? But if you're a coach and you see that you go to your front office and say, hey, man, when I was in Denver, the best player on our team was Justin Simmons, right? This guy is the best ball hawk in the post-Ed Reed era him and Xavier Howard are 1A, 1B for me. It just screams like a move the Dolphins will make. And here's why, too. It makes so much sense for the player, right? Justin Simmons is going to want to cash in on a big contract. Right now, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. He's going to have to sign what I call a mercenary deal. 1 year, prove you still got it, go get the big money. What you said about the leverage, 100%. It allows you a contingency plan if you run into a Christian Wilkins situation with Javon Holland. But in a perfect world, you don't get there. Hey, man, you're a 1 year mercenary. You're coming in. You're making us have the best secondary in the entire league. I think you can give them a good base, but have a lot of incentives in the deal. And it would just make this team. I mean, look, this could be bold. Outside of Jalen Ramsey, you get Justin Simmons. He's probably the best player in your defense. I mean, he really might be. He's that good of a player. I just think it's a move the Dolphins will evaluate because they have 18.5. They got to use probably $7 million of that to sign their draft class, right? Every time they release a player off the top 51, it gets them another $1 million in their pocket, right? And some of the moves, like I don't think Jeff Wilson's going to make this team anymore. Personally, there's players I think that will be jettisoned off. And because of that, the Dolphins have some cap flexibility to play with. Man, if you're Justin Simmons and you're looking at the landscape of the NFL, like, wouldn't you want to come on a Dolphins? It's Miami. It's tax-free. The culture's amazing. They need a safety. I just think it makes a lot of sense. Now, it's got to work out on a contract friendly to the team. But I did hear that Justin Simmons didn't want to go to Tennessee, and that's why he didn't sign with the Titans. So does he view Miami as the opportunity where he can shine to get himself best position for a contract next year where he can win, right? And the answer to a lot of those questions are yes. So I have no intel on this, but, man, it's got to be something that has the Miami Dolphins scratching their head. They didn't really fill the safety position draft. I know they got Patrick Morris. I think he's a practice squad guy. I actually like Mark Perry better. Mark Perry reminds me a lot of a guy the Dolphins drafted out of Clemson in the 5th round back in the day, Chris Clemens, actually. I see a lot of Chris Clemens in him. I think Mark Perry's got a shot to make this roster, but if you could get Justin Simmons, all that's for nothing to me. I could care less who makes the roster because you give me Javon Holland, Justin Simmons, Kendall Fuller, Jalen Ramsey as your starters with Kader Kohu, Jordan Poyer, Nick Needham is kind of your depth in the secondary. Cam Smith, sign me up.
Cosmic Raccoon says, hey, Reason and Neal, watching live with my dad, Dean. So
That's
thanks
awesome.
for the awesome show. Appreciate you, sir. Okay, a few things here. I don't think Jeff Wilson's getting cut.
You think he's going to make it?
Yeah, especially after I read one of Barry Jackson's latest articles. It sounds like Jeff Wilson's staying.
So you think they would get rid of a guy like Chris Brooks?
Yeah, I don't think they're that high on Chris Brooks. I think the fans are more high on Chris Brooks than they are.
Yeah.
I think Salvin Ahmed and Chris Brooks are going to be the odd men out, and I think they could probably sneak Chris Brooks on the practice squad.
Yeah, it's not like Jeff Wilson's making a lot of money either.
Yeah. Anyways, it sounds like Jeff Wilson's staying. So, number 2, we both have guard. You have a guy who was, who could be filling as a backup for Isaiah Wynn, who's probably going to miss time and he could step in. And Dalton Reisner. I have a guy who automatically would go into the competition with Eichenberg and Jack Driscoll at right guard with Greg Van Roten. He played all 17 games for the Raiders last year. Both guys are long in the tooth. Both guys are vets who've been around the block. But clearly we both agree that there needs to be an interior upgrade. And you could go really either way. Dalton Reisner, you're going to need a backup plan for Isaiah Wynn, if history has taught us anything. And then on the flip side, Greg Van Roten, I think he beats out Eichenberg and he beats out Jack Driscoll. So what are your thoughts on adding an interior guy here?
Well, look, I think they have to add a veteran at any level. I like Dalton Reisner, 75 career starts. I don't think either of us think that these guys are Zach Martin or Alan Faneca. They're good quality vets that can come in and give you quality starts. It's kind of like the same approach that we're taking on the defensive line. Get a lot of experienced, tenured players in there to kind of have many fulfill the hole. I think that could be the same thing here, where Van Roten, whether it's Reisner, you just give me a veteran that can be a quality starter if need be. I'll tell you what, though, like I actually think that maybe the one reason that they're not signing interior offensive line is that they're kind of waiting to see if there's any health improvements with Connor Williams. I think they're holding out hope that they might be able to get him back on the dirt cheap if he could play. I'm not a doctor, but it doesn't sound promising that he can. But we need some assurance for Liam Eichenberg, Jack Driscoll, and Isaiah Wynn, right? All three of those guards, I think, whether we like them or not, they all come with some question marks, right? Like none of them are a surefire guard that you're expecting to start 17 games. So I don't want the interior offensive line to be what hampers this team. They said if they didn't find the guy in the draft, they were going to go to free agency. I want to see that happen. We're only a few weeks away now from that June 1st money becoming available. So I think it's time for the Dolphins to start, formalizing something with somebody on the interior. One more quality player that could provide starter depth would make me feel a lot better about this offensive line.
Yeah, agreed. And we know that this is a real possibility post June 1st because they basically told everyone, stay put, let's see how the draft goes.
Right.
And the one offensive lineman they added isn't exactly someone you'd be, kicking into guard, right? Like, let's be honest. So it's a real possibility. Now, where we wholeheartedly agree, and there's no one else to find really, and that is obviously Calais Campbell. We know what he did with the Ravens, right?
Right.
He still had a lot left in the tank for the Falcons last year. He had 6.5 sacks last year.
Right.
Had 5.5 the year before with Baltimore. A great thing about Calais Campbell, too, is not just the box score. He can line up at 0. He can basically flex all the way from a 0 to a 5.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
like you can be a 0 tech, a 3 tech, a 5 tech, a 1, whatever you want from 0 to 5. He gives you flexibility there. Now, obviously, he's 37 years old, another one who's long in the tooth. But, if you're willing to add a guy like Shaq Barrett, why wouldn't you be willing to add a guy like Calais Campbell? And, you talked about the coaching connection with Butch Barry. Now, we don't know if Butch Barry would go to bat for Dalton Reisner because we know some of those offensive linemen in Denver were throwing Butch under the bus when he left,
right.
even though he had them in top 10 in pass block win rate, right? So Calais Campbell is another guy where a coach could go to bat for, like Anthony Weaver. And I want to say something here. It doesn't matter where you take my list or it doesn't matter where you take your list. Are we looking at more than $14 million combined for the three of these players on either list? Like, you could assign all three of these players on either list. But anyways, I digress.
Simmons might make it hairy, but
I think he's going to be around 8 or 9 from what I'm understanding.
Yeah, I think that with the money we have free, our draft class, and just a couple small moves, you could easily afford either of these pairs. I think you could. It's doable.
So what's your thoughts on Calais Campbell? Because we obviously both agree. But one thing that people aren't going to talk about enough is his flexibility and versatility across the line, which makes him an interesting addition.
Yep. No, first of all, I'm not in the framing business. I bought this framing shop for my mother-in-law in 2016, and I just came up here because it's close to the house today. But look, man, I'll tell you this. Out of this whole list, there's players that can play on the football field, and there's people that can not only just do that, they do something for your locker room. Calais Campbell, to me, when he came out of Miami, man, when he fell to the second round of the Arizona Cardinals, I remember I did a mock draft. I had him going 5th overall in that draft. Ever since that guy entered the league, he's a player I've loved. I don't care where he goes. I've had the utmost respect on him. I think he's a Hall of Fame player. He still gets it done. He was probably 2 years ago the best player on Baltimore's defense before they had Roquan Smith, to be honest. Him and Anthony Weaver have a great relationship. He played his college ball at the U. Man, this guy, like you said, is interchangeable along the defensive line. Still very productive. What else he also does is he gets his hands on a lot of balls, like, with a young.
Diddy.
Yeah, I caught myself. With a young, with Chop Robinson coming in, with Mo Kamara coming in, adding another strong veteran presence, just like you're doing with Odell, with Malik Washington and Taj Washington from USC. Like if you could get this guy for the same deal you got Odell Beckham, sign me up tomorrow. Like Calais Campbell to me would be such an impact And if you have any questions on the defense, for me, it is on the defensive line. You put Calais Campbell at a 5 tech paired up with Zach Sealer, a lot of my worries go away. I think this is a home run move. And if I actually had to pick any of the 6 people or the 5 people we have up there, because we both have Campbell, it would be, I honestly think that I might even lean Calais Campbell over Justin Simmons, even though I think Simmons is a younger, better football player. I just think that Calais Campbell is just a perfect fit in Miami.
I agree 110%, man.
Do you think I think that's a real possibility. I really do. I think he's a guy, because of Anthony Weaver's ties, it would not surprise me in a post-June world if Calais Campbell's out there that something materialized here. It really wouldn't surprise me.
Over 910 of you between X and YouTube watching right now. Listen, I think Justin Simmons is waiting around for something. And it don't feel like it's just an injury. It feels like, and I'm not even saying us, it feels like a team has told him, sit around until post June 1st when we got a little money and we can make something happen. Like, the Justin Simmons is very weird to me. You know what I mean? Like,
doesn't it sound like Chris Greer would say something like that, though?
Well, he's already said it to the guards and stuff, right?
Right.
As far as Calais Campbell, that's another one too. Like, I don't think just the guard market had guys on it where we said, hey, sit tight till after the draft.
Right.
I just don't. I think they know after the draft what's going to happen is that 18.5 million is going to hit, plus the 10 million or so, the 10 to 12 million from Tua's extension, right? Then you take the 7 million off that from the draft class, which, again, they don't need to start signing the draft class guys till like July if they really want to, right?
Right.
So they could sit here and they could have fun and throw cash around like Scrooge McDuck and then say, okay, well, let's circle back around and figure out how to pay these guys. But I don't think they're going to be that, that irresponsible. I think they want to sign a couple players, take care of the draft class, take care of some of these more extensions, which that won't even impact the money this year either. But I do think they want to have money stashed away for the trade deadline and potentially roll some over into next year. But again, I go back to it. Okay, let's say we add Justin Simmons and Calais Campbell. How much do you think that really costs you? I think that costs you like $12 million.
No, I was going to say 12.
I think you're like 8 or 9 for Justin, and then you're 3 or 4 for Calais, and you're sitting, come on. And then you add one of those guards being you had. How much are Reisner,
$2 million.
Mark Lewinsky, or Greg Van Roten, or Phil Haynes? How much are these guys really going to command? Andres Pete didn't command no $3 million.
Well, and reason you also got to think, like, say they go and sign Van Roten for like a $2 million deal, right?
Yeah.
It's only going to hit your cap $1 million because you're probably releasing a guy like Robert Jones who's on the cap for $1 million. So, like, it's only the top 51 attribute to your cap total, right? So, like that to me, it's like the Dolphins could make it work easily, actually, and it like, and plus, who knows if they get this Tua deal done and they make the first year of that deal the low hit, it could be that this year's the low hit. They save $20 million in cap space, right? And then they can spend a little bit and carry some over if they need be. So I do think that if they get that deal done, like, here's how I look at it, right? And it's overall my perspective. I want to be conscious of what the salary cap is for next year. But the Dolphins were able to get out of the biggest mess I've ever seen them in salary cap wise this year, right? I don't give a shit about the salary cap next year. If you have $18.5 million coming free, give me the best 53-man roster because this is going to be one of the best years in our window. We've seen Buffalo. Buffalo's window kind of closed, and they had to get rid of a lot of players. That's going to come for the Dolphins in 2 years. Like, that's going to come. Make it the best opportunity you have to win right now. Get aggressive. Look, we've already seen players say they're going to take less. We've seen our players like Jalen Ramsey, Tyreek Hill recruiting players into here like Odell Beckham. Like, this is the time because of your value of your franchise. You just got number 1 on the scorecard in the entire league, right? Like, everything is here. The mojo of this team. Take advantage, make that your selling point, and bring some people in here for cheaper than they're going to get. You add a Justin Simmons and a Calais Campbell and a Van Rotten to this roster. I mean, it's light years even better than last year's roster without Christian Wilkins.
The depth alone, right?
Because the 53-man roster is all, I've already looked at it and tried to start playing with people. Man, it is hard. It is hard. You are cutting good people this year.
Anthony asked about the Bills having money to clear up. I know they're really high on Cole Bishop. I think he's going to be their starting free safety this year.
I like
him. Simmons can play in the box. He can cover out of the slot. We're really stressing Simmons because in 2 high looks in our 3 safety packages, and because of all the things Simmons could do hybrid, versatility wise, and as a hybrid guy, that's why we're really stressing Simmons. You know what I mean? So, and we also know, here's the thing: they got Taylor Rapp is their other safety, right? Our second safety is Poyer, who has lost a step. Right, that range is not there anymore. That's another reason why we're sitting here with Simmons is we need more range than just Javon Holland and Elijah Campbell, right?
Right, you nailed the word just there, range. The amount of range you would have with Holland and Simmons as your safeties, it's insane. And then you could make obviously Jalen Ramsey the ultimate gambler at the corner. It would do so much for this defense. And I think Jordan Poyer is going to be an upgrade to Deshaun Elliott. But look, we got him for 1 year, $2 million. If you're expecting everything to be perfect, come on, that you don't get perfect players for 1 year, $2 million. They have a bona fide need at safety if they're running 3. And I think it's a great feel-good story that Nick Needham's working out there. And I love Nick Needham as a depth piece. But I think you need another impact player at safety. I really do to kind of solidify the back half. Now, if Cam Smith catches on like wildfire this preseason and you can trust him on the boundary, then you have
he's an insurance broker. What are you expecting out here?
But then you could have Ramsey like that chess piece that we didn't get to see last year. Reason we didn't get to see Jalen Ramsey for what he should be. The chess piece of this defense. We had, and I have
see it this year.
I have turned on Vic Fangio. So everyone who's like, Neal, you said this is a great move, and you've turned. You're damn right. I've turned. I put the NWO shirt on. I'm Hulk Hogan. I'm so damn tired of what Vic Fangio did to this defense last year. I think he hampered us last year because he did not allow people to be utilized to their strengths. That Tennessee game, that debacle, is on Vic Fangio's ass. We would have been hosting Mason Rudolph and the Steelers instead of going to the second coldest iceberg game ever in Kansas City if it wasn't for old man Vic Fangio.
All right, we're going to talk about Fangio in a minute here, but let's stick on safety. Let's stick on safety. I don't know if you've heard the whispers and the rumblings. This is something EM Dolphin fans suggested back in 2020. And we've seen it start to come into fruition the last 2 years with his snaps. Do the Dolphins have that safety option in-house with Nick Needham? Because it looks like he's working closely with Poyer. We've seen the transition being teased a little bit over the last 2-3 years. Where are you at with Needham potentially being an answer at safety depth for the Miami Dolphins right now?
I will say this. I am a huge Nick Needham fan because he's a guy like that unheralded guy that stepped into a corner role, played at a high level. I think at a point he was a top 5 nickel corner in the whole league. When he first really busted onto the scene, he got forced on the boundary because of injury. Then he took his own injury. I like Nick Needham. I love him as a depth piece. I'd be okay with him being in the safety rotation. With that said, though, I think, it's all about the opportunity that presents itself with me. And, we named the 2 safeties that I would take, Diggs and Simmons. If there's no option there, I think it's awesome to see Nick Needham get some reps. And I'll tell you what, man, I'm excited to see some of these guys play in the preseason. I don't think Nick Needham was 100% healthy last year coming back from his injury. And I do think he has a lot to offer snap-wise, and I could see him being a really good fit at safety. I think it's kind of a project at this point of his career, though, if I'm being honest. And if you can go get a sure thing and you have the funds to do it, I'd rather go that route, to be honest.
Because Barry reported today that the Dolphins conveyed to Needham a while ago that he'd be working with the safeties and some with the corners.
Good.
And he said at this point, Elijah Campbell and Nick Needham are the backup safeties on their depth chart. So I thought that was interesting. Let's talk about, because I want to get back to something, but let's talk about let's talk about this for a sec. Fangio. First of all, the first thing I want to say is I was not wrong about Fangio, Jason Keck, because I told while everyone was complaining he should be fired in the first 6 weeks. I said we give him to week 8 and wait till this defense pops. And preseason, I projected even after the first game, I said this would be a top 5 defense in the NFL, and ended up. So were we wrong about Fangio staying? Sure, but I know I wasn't wrong about what we'd get out of Fangio. But let's talk about Fangio.
Right.
Quickly, he had his introductory press conference today with the Philadelphia Eagles. He said it was a fair assumption that he would have become the Eagles defensive coordinator last year instead of joining the Dolphins, if not for the whole Jonathan Gannon scandal, basically. He also said that, he basically indicated that he didn't have, I didn't see it at all when it came to players having an issue with him. And him holding back players. He says he didn't see that at all. And I'll be honest with you. Did you watch a little bit of that? He seemed way more happier. He seemed way more happier to be in Philadelphia. Like, the guy was laughing and joking around when he was up there. Just quickly, we don't have to get too deep into this. Your thoughts on Fangio basically denying there was no rift between him and the players? I mean, we all knew he'd do that. And him basically saying, hey, if not for the Jonathan Gannon ordeal, I probably would have been in Philadelphia anyways.
Well, look, I think that's factual that he would be in Philadelphia. I think we all experienced the high and low of the Vic Fangio situation when we thought we had him and it took a week for him to actually sign a contract. I think he was trying to find a way to be there. And look, if your heart's not into something, you probably don't put your best foot forward. I think Vic Fangio is a tremendous defensive coordinator. For me as a football fan, the lesson I have learned is that you can't go out and go buy your coaches. You can't go out and buy your franchise quarterback. You need to develop them in-house yourself. And for me, I think the name Vic Fangio, the resume impressed the hell out of me. But if he didn't want to be here, I don't want him to be here, right? And you can get a guy that doesn't have the pedigree of a Vic Fangio, but if his heart's here and he's committed to it, you're going to see better results. And I think we're in a huge transition in not just football, in life, where you're seeing a lot of old leaders retire out and a lot of new leaders be born into things. And I've been high on Anthony Weaver from the get-go of the search. I think Vic Fangio is a better defensive coordinator than Anthony Weaver. And if Anthony Weaver could ever achieve that, that's great for him. But with that said, I think Anthony Weaver is a better defensive coordinator for the 2024 Miami Dolphins than Vic Fangio would have been. And that's what's important to me. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, Vic.
Basically. Yeah.
Right. See ya.
Yeah.
I don't care. I hope we actually see you. And I'd like Tua and Tyreek to light that defense up.
Yeah.
Right.
Not enough people talking about how Malik Washington's still going to eat in this offense, and it bugs me because that kid's going to be a baller this year.
I think so.
Cosmic Raccoon
beast.
Donated $5. Said, my dad and I have been working on my math using the 53-man roster wish list. Love it.
Tough. It's tough.
Any way you can incorporate Dolphins into learning, that's a win for me. And Dad Dean is nominated for Father of the Year. Love it. Okay, we got over 1,075 people watching between Twitter and YouTube right now. So let's talk about the main point here. We're talking about free agents we'd like to add. Let's talk about if the Miami Dolphins could be exploring the trade market. Me and you talked earlier. Was it last week? I believe it was last week, right? And we not only heard that they were sniffing around, but there was a team that basically confirmed that they've talked to in the Washington Commanders. Now, we can't sit here and confirm players that were discussed.
Yeah, I don't have any info on that.
No, but we can sit here and theorize they're looking to offload on the defensive line a little bit. We have a need there. On the defensive line. They're looking to offload on the defensive line. We have a little bit of a need on the defensive line. So me and you are just sitting here putting, hey, we're doing our own version of math, Cosmic. And, you suggested, hey, were they high on Daron Payne? The one guy who I've thought about since we had our conversation was Jonathan Allen. When you look at the money, Jonathan Allen is the one where you can get out of it. You can get out of his contract after this year, right? If it don't work out, you can play with his money because he only has this year and next year left on his contract, and then it's done. So it's easy. You can play with that money. He has a lesser cap hit and dead cap hit than Daron Payne, because Daron Payne's cap explodes over the next few years.
Just got that deal. Yep.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts? Let's start off piece by piece.
Right.
We'll get into Washington, but let's start off with the trade market. What are your thoughts with the Dolphins exploring the trade market, knowing they have all this money we've discussed that they're potentially going to free up?
I think that Chris Grier has always got his finger on the pulse of the trade market. And what I was told specifically is keep an eye on the Dolphin or the Washington, Miami, because they've been having trade discussions since the draft. So when we talked about this before we came on, but we were texting back and forth, and I said, it's interesting because I thought the Commanders had a really good draft, but they didn't really fill any positions of major need outside of quarterback, right? They took Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
Like for me, they have one of the worst offensive lines in football, and the players that they signed to protect Jaden Daniels, who I think needs a good offensive line in front of him to be successful, was very meek, to be honest.
Was it just like Tyler Biadasz was the only?
Yeah, Biadasz, and they got honestly, they just their offensive line is just nothing.
Yeah, the tackles are they got what, Cornelius Lucas and Andrew Wiley. Now I like Biadasz and I like Cosme, but I agree once you start getting to the bookend tackles and Allegretti as the left guard, it's not that pretty right now.
Yeah, it's not pretty. And so like I'm looking at where would they be looking to offload it? And plus they had an ownership change and a change in coaching. And when all that stuff happens, and realistically the Commanders window is not 2024, right? Like they just know that. I'd say they're the worst team in their division by a substantial amount. And I hate the Giants roster right now, but that's for another day. But like I look at it and I think, wow, so where the Dolphins have a need, right? What does Chris Grier like to do? He likes to make splashes. And I did suggest Payne, but you think about it, Jonathan Allen would make a lot of sense in his own right. Neither of us are saying we've heard the Dolphins are trading for these guys, but it would make a lot of sense after getting Johnny Newton for them to offload one of those guys. And
they have Fedarian Mathis too, right?
Right. And they were willing just a year ago to offload Chase Young and Montez Sweat.
Yes, sir.
So they might be having
which is crazy, Neal, because they're offloading them because of the money they handed to the interior. Then they get a new ownership change, a coaching change, and it's like, we're not paying two interior guys this much money. Are you crazy?
Right. And what you got to think about what they're going to try to do with the cap is they're going to try to do what all these smart teams are doing. Build a wall in front of my young quarterback, get him weapons. They have Terry McLaurin. He's great.
And Jahan Dotson.
Yep. Dotson they have. I think they need to see a major leap from Dotson this year.
They brought in Eckler too, right?
Yep. They brought in Eckler. Yep.
Because you're right. Dotson after that first year.
And I like him. Again, I watch a lot of Penn State.
Boy, yeah.
And
you drafted my boy Luke McCaffrey way higher than we thought he'd go.
Third round. Well, here's the thing about them, reason that I think it's really weird that they did, right?
Yeah.
They went out and signed Bobby Wagner, right? That doesn't really fit their building period.
Yeah.
A lot of honestly, I don't really understand their path, I guess, right now. I just don't understand what they're doing. And it's okay. Like they're trying to figure it out. I do trust their ownership group that bought their team. I think it's actually impressive. And I appreciated the way they went around their head coaching search. I thought that was unique and well done. But maybe that is the guy. Jonathan Allen makes a lot of sense. Jonathan Allen would be a really big welcome addition to our team. And look, Chris Grier will make a move if it's fair. Now, I will say this: after the draft we just had with the picks that we had,
bro, if you added Jonathan Allen to this front,
it'd be amazing. But I will say this: we have our first, we have a second, we have 2/3 next year. I mean, we have a full arsenal of picks.
Yeah, I don't want to trade any of them. Do you?
That's what I'm saying. Like after this year's draft, to see the damage, like Chris Grier to me, I think had his best from round 1 to round 7 complete draft. I think almost everybody makes his team. Probably Patrick Morris is practice squad. But
I was going to point that out. I'm glad you did.
But I would say, first round, like Chop Robinson. I said this last week. I think he's going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. I think he's going to come in here, get coached up. His explosive first step, I think he's going to be the guy in this draft that has the high ceiling that's like, holy shit, did everyone overthink it? This guy's traits are elite. He's got a passion for football. His first step's the best anyone's ever really seen in the last 10 years plus. I did hear also that he used to tear up Olu Fashanu at Penn State. Save that for another day, Jets fans, if you're listening, because I know you listen because I hear you guys talking trash. So keep an eye on it. But then they go back and then they go and they find a guy, first of all, like Jalen Wright to me, I'm just saying this. I think when you look back, he's going to be one of those dudes that's a first-round fantasy pick. I think he reminds me a little bit of Jamal Charles when he went to Kansas City. I was just so excited about that pick, and it changes my whole perception of the running back room. I didn't skip over Patrick Paul. I'm coming to him last for a reason. Then you go and you get Mo Camara. I don't think there's a person in the world that was upset with that pick because I think he's an NFL starter. And
if they did, they just hadn't watched the kid or heard of him, right?
Yeah. When you get Malik Washington, I think you're 100% right, man. I think Malik Washington has unbelievable staying power, and I get the Odell Beckham move just for the fact, let him learn under Odell. And then Taj Washington or Tajay, however the hell you say it, he's going to make the NFL. He's going to make the roster. River Craycraft is going bye-bye because of that guy, right? Like that's going to happen. Patrick Paul, I think, had the most controversy around him, right? But like Patrick Paul with Teron Armstead, Austin Jackson, and Duke, who's training these guys, right? If Patrick Paul figures out his hand placement with that punch, with that length, with that wingspan, this guy has an opportunity to be a dominant left tackle in football. I don't agree that he needs a makeover. I agree he needs some refinement. If he gets his hand placement down, he is going to be the replacement, and I'm good with him being a project. I think from soup to nuts, this is one of the best drafts that Chris Grier ever had. I actually kind of want to see what he does next year. And reason I'll say this, I've been guilty of saying this, that the next year's draft class isn't this year's, and it's not. But on the defensive side of the ball, it's way better. It's way better than this year's defensive side of the ball. Like,
that's what's going to disappoint people, right? It's the quarterbacks and the wide receivers aren't as good as from this year, and we've seen over the last couple of years, right?
It's a good running back draft. It's a good running back draft.
It is. Yeah, that's why I didn't mention him.
Yeah, the best receiver, the Missouri dude, Burden III. Honestly, I wouldn't have had him. I would have had him wide receiver 5 or 6 in this year's draft class. The tight end position, I like Lachey out of Iowa. I like Loveland out of Michigan. I don't think either of them are in the wavelength of a Brock Bowers, if I'm being honest. It's a really good offensive tackle class and a great defense.
Where would you have Amika Ibuka?
Oh, I love him. In my first mock draft, that's why I had the Dolphins draft, and now that might change with Washington. I'll tell you, the guy that I love for the Dolphins, I'll just throw this out here way too early. I think he's the next great Georgia offensive tackle is Ernest Green III. He's a guy that I think is going to really rise up. But dude, it's the defense. The prize is on the defensive line, man. There are so many good defensive tackles in this grab. Mason Graham, Kenny Graham from Michigan, Jamar
Mason
Turner.
Graham's going to be good.
Oh, Mason Graham is he's probably my favorite player in this draft. Honestly.
And the tackle class, like I like Will Campbell, he's decent.
Kelvin Banks, who I think's got inside-outside versatility.
It's a decent tackle class too.
Right. I think it's a good. I want to see what Grier can do with a first, a second, 2/3, a fourth.
Yeah, so do I.
Like I kind of want to see it.
Yeah. Plus, we want to, listen, 4 picks on the first 2 days would be pretty sweet, bro. I ain't gonna lie.
Right, and that's why I loved what they did with Jalen Wright, man. Because I'll say this: you get a guy like that, and he might be, when you look at the offensive playmakers, the biggest steal in the draft. I really think he has that potential.
Yeah, it's him or Malik for sure.
Yeah, and we got both of them. What Chris? I think Chris Grier. I mean, man, and I know there's people that were like, he did fire Chris Grier after the draft. There's people that are just never going to be happy, man, because
no matter what,
get Malik Washington, get him in the 3rd round. I'd have been happy.
Grier can't draft. Okay, then why did Wilkins just get paid the money he did? Why did Robert Hunt get paid the money he did? Why did AVG get overpaid? What are we talking about here? Grier can't draft. We can't hold on to our players because they can command so much money on the open market because of how well they perform.
Right, and why do we win 11 games making the playoffs when like 75% of our good players were hurt for most of the year last year.
You know, like it's absolute utter nonsense, man. We got over 600 people watching on YouTube. We got over 560 people watching on X. We're over 1,160 people watching right now. And just to wrap this up, listen, you talked about, I can't agree any less. You know what I mean? Sorry, I can't agree any more with you. Sorry. You know, I can't agree any more with you. A splash trade feels like a Greer move, and I don't think Odell Beckham is the end of this journey in terms of adding players. Now, it might be one of the splashiest names we add, but it's nowhere near with the amount of free agents they've told to sit on their hands and wait, you know, post-draft. Not only that, not only the trade market, but then there's going to be players that are going to be cut or added to the trade market as training camp opens up and rookies start performing in certain areas that may surprise staffs and make other people expendable. So the fact that Chris Grier is not shutting the door on the trade market when he realizes he's going to have this much money, you know what it shows me, Neal? It shows me that they're taking this window very seriously, number one. And number two, they're trying to explore the best ways to spend the money they're allocating to spend. And they're not just settling for, I can get a couple guys off the scrap heap in the free agent. No, they're saying, listen, we've got multiple third-round picks next year, right? Because even if they trade one of those, we still have a third-round pick. So now they're sitting here saying, we're open to all options, and we're open to any way to make this roster right so we can win a playoff game and make a playoff run this year. You got to respect it.
Yeah, I think when you have Chris Grier as the GM, you know the grill's on and the spatula's in his hand, and he's just waiting to flip. You know what I mean? I think he's always waiting to make a move. And we put up the three guys. I think Chris Grier is more likely to go get one splash with that money than get three positions of value. I just think that's the way he operates. If it was one person off that list that I said they'd probably go the Justin Simmons route and pay him. And I think that's how Chris Grier operates. And I think that if they have to get by on this interior offensive line, I think they like Robert Jones. I think
they like Liam Eichenberg.
They do. Yeah, they do. They like him. And honestly, as long as that offensive line does its job, we don't have to have a 1991 Dallas Cowboys line out there. I will say this. I feel really good about the offensive tackle. I feel really good about the offensive tackle room, knowing that it's Austin Jackson, Teron Armstead, Patrick Paul, and Kendall Lamb.
Yeah, agreed. So, man, I know we're about to wrap this up here. You got any final thoughts you want to add before we get out of here?
Yeah, I don't know what just happened. I have this really loud noise that just hit me in the background. But no, man, the one thing I'll say, man, just all this stuff about having to be on a side, being Tua or Chris Grier, and enjoy your freaking football team once in a while, man. It's not always about being right. I love this Dolphins team. I have fun with them. Is Chris Grier the best GM? No. Is Tua the best quarterback? No. But, man, at the end of the day, I love this team. I love cheering for them. I don't think everything's got to be a war and who was right and who said, this last year. Let's freaking go, man. Support this team. We went from the laughingstock of this league to one of the perennial playoff teams that have the highest ceiling in this league. Rome wasn't built in a day. We all want playoff wins and championships. Enjoy this, though. Don't take so much time complaining or worried about what you don't have that you don't enjoy what you have. There are 25 plus other franchises around this league that look from the outside saying, I wish I was the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And they're also saying we wish we had what the Miami Dolphins future holds in store for them, because this team's setting them up for, this isn't just I'm not buying into the 1 year window. I think this team is setting themselves up where, this is going to be a multi-year window. And I think they're going to set themselves up too, that when they do have to retool, it's not going to be a full teardown around Tua. It's going to be a soft rebuild so they can get right back in the thick of things. This team is just, the guys who are running it just don't look like they're putting themselves in a position like the Rams were.
Yeah. You know what? I feel like Stephen Ross has butted out of the decision-making a little bit and allowing the football people to do football things. Yeah. And that's what it smells like on the outside. Yeah, and this, look, I thought that they were going in on the all window. You don't have the draft you just had
Yeah.
That's a draft that says we're re-gearing because we know
Yeah.
Bradley
And we're getting out
Chubb-
ahead of some of them.
Right.
Yeah.
We know Bradley Chubb, we know Teron Armstead aren't here for the long haul, and that's not a knock on these players. Great franchises have succession plans at all positions.
It's true.
That's the reason the Dolphins were horrible for 20 years is because the previous regimes had no idea how to plan for the future. All they tried to do was go get Ndamukong Suh, Mike Wallace, and live in the moment, and they put too much on one player, where right now the Dolphins are really focused on building a complete 53-man roster, and I'm excited. And I think the next time we talk, man, we're going to be talking schedule, and we're going to go live for that. So,
well, I won't be here next
you
week.
won't be here. Oh shit!
But we'll talk about schedule. I mean, the week
figure
after.
it out.
Yeah, so maybe that weekend we can go live or something. I don't know, because I'll be back on Friday. So
we'll figure it out.
Guys, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new. I am out of here. I will have new content dropping for you Saturday, Monday, and Wednesday. So be on the lookout for that. Fins up, smash the like button. We'll see you on the next one.